Hey everyone, it's Chris Gio coming to you from Beyond the Veil. It's been a little while since we've uploaded a video, but I wanted to go ahead and put one out there. It is Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays, happy solstice, whatever you're celebrating out there. Quick update before we get into the topic of the video, which is going to be the Mandela Effect, a whole new perspective, and also a whole new perspective on timelines and merging timelines and things like that. Quick update as far as what Cherie and I have been up to. I've been in the studio making a ton of music and doing what I love. You know, I realized that I have been ignoring that part of me, and I feel alive again. I feel like on fire. I feel better than I've ever felt being able to make music like this. Cherie's out of her sling and she's doing great. We just ordered a couple of new microphones, badass microphones. So we weren't planning to do any shows until we rearrange some stuff in our physical space here. I'll tell you about that here in a second. But I think when these new microphones come, I'm going to have to do a show, like a full Beyond the Veil show, because I got to test out these new mics because these are some badass microphones. So we are going to get the fuck out of here. I'm tired of the Pacific Northwest. I'm tired of the cold. I'm tired of the people up here. I want to get to a place to where there's a little more higher consciousness people. And I've got to say, here in this area, I've met one person that is truly higher consciousness the whole time I've been here. Well, except for Brent. You know, Brent's up here too. And I'm not discounting Brent, it's just Brent's, you know, like part of us. But I mean, you know, people that are outside of our sphere, I've only met one person, and that's not good. I've realized over time that the truther mentality, as I've said before in previous videos, brought us out to the middle of nowhere, which was very damaging for us. But it also brought us out to a place where the consciousness level of people just quite isn't where it should be to be conducive to the elevation of consciousness. So we're getting the hell out of here, and we're going to somewhere else where we have access to better food, better people, whole different vibe altogether. So I'm really looking forward to that. But right now the studio is isn't broken down quite yet, but we'll be breaking down the studio, then rebuilding it here in the next couple of weeks. So my apologies, but this has been a time, the end of 2019 has been a time to purge and purge everything. We've purged a bunch of phony motherfuckers out of our lives. We have purged anything that doesn't suit us out of our lives to prepare for what's to come 2020. 2020 is full vision. 2020 is full 2020 vision. I mean, you know, you got it right there. 2020, full transparency, full disclosure, full everything. And we're just getting geared up and prepared for that, and doing all the inner work that's required. We'll be getting back to doing some hardcore ayahuasca, DMT experiences, doing more videos about that, and that's really what I love. I mean, I realized if I'm not able to sit down and smoke DMT and then do a video, there's no point in me doing videos at all, period. I need to talk about the inner gnosis and bring that out, and that's what makes a really good Beyond the Veil channel and format, in my humble opinion. We are, of course, fighting this terrible AI algorithm that has been suppressing us, and many like us. It's not just us. It's not like it's targeted towards us, but people haven't been able to find our videos. They haven't been notified, this and that. So we may start another channel, and maybe start it with the AI algorithm in mind to, you know, not get flagged by the AI. And again, I don't think that we've been singled out. I think it's just the AI algorithm. It's just the AI that has oh, there's a cat that caught a mouse up there. Oh, poor mouse. My cats would tear it up too, though. I guess that's what cats do. Anyways, so yeah, the AI algorithm, it sucks. But understanding that we are inside of the simulated reality, that we're inside the AI, allows us to better navigate through it. So if we start a new YouTube channel, we'll be able to veer away from certain keywords that get us flagged by the artificial intelligence. That being said, let's get into the new revelations about the Mandela Effect. So when the Mandela Effect first became a thing, I guess let me take you back to 2010, because this was before the Mandela Effect was even coined. Cherie and I had just met. We'd only been together a couple of months at that point, and we were filling up our water bottles at this facility, which was a reverse osmosis facility. And we just went there 2 weeks prior to that, and we had made a bunch of ayahuasca and stuff like that, so we went to go get more filtered water. We go there and the place is gone. It's not like they had moved out, but the entire building is gone, as if it never existed. And I started to notice all of these different anomalies in this physical space that we're in. I noticed roads appearing where they weren't before. I noticed buildings and hotel rooms and things like that popping up where they weren't before. And I started asking people on the show, have you heard of this phenomenon? Have you experienced this? A lot of people, oh no, I don't know, that's kind of weird, that's kind of weird. Then the Mandela Effect came out and became a thing. I knew when the Mandela Effect came out and became a thing that it was very important for one reason or another. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, but it was so important to remember the older memories, to remember the way things were supposed to be before the changes of the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect changes seem very arbitrary, but we're at a point of singularity right now where the arbitrary is of the utmost importance. They've all merged all together at the same time. But it wasn't until recently that I really started to understand why the Mandela Effect is so important and why it's so important to remember those old memories. So it's going to be a little difficult for me to bring it from here out. I tried earlier to make another video and it just came out all convoluted, so I'm going to try to be as on point as possible, but bear with me here because this is a concept that is very difficult for me to explain. So it has to do with merging timelines and diverting timelines as well. But the thing is, we think of timelines, or at least I have up to this point, as different spaces or different linear pathways. We'll call them pathways. So you've got these different pathways, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, infinitely going out. And those are the different timelines. And we like to think of the timelines as several different spaces, like we're in right now, like several different Earths all together, all simultaneously running at the same time, but they're each running on a different timeline where different events are taking place. Maybe you can call it a multiverse, or different universes all put together like that. And we've talked about the phenomenon of jumping from one timeline to another. And I've always had trouble with this because, you know, I always wake up in the same body. I always wake up in the same space. It's just small details around me have changed whenever these timeline shifts occur. And I think to myself, so what happens? So when we sleep, our consciousness is extracted from our body here, because our consciousness is inside of the body, or at least this thing right here, which is the brain, this computer processor, is decoding this reality, and it's like an analog digital converter, converting the digital information outside through the brain into analog to where our consciousness, or our raw consciousness, can process it. So what happens? We're removed from this body, and then we're placed into another body in another timeline, and we're using a completely different decoder, even though it's, you know, somewhat the same, but that's how different timelines work. And it never made sense to me, and I finally understood what exactly different timelines and diverging timelines are. So hear me out here. The recent revelation that I've come to, and this is going to all tie into the Mandela Effect here too. The recent revelation that I've come to is that we're not really talking about changing timelines. There's only one physical space. There's only one matrix. You know, I've gone back and forth about this in the past, so if you've heard me in previous videos say there's different matrices, there could be, but for this particular idea, there's only one physical space, and that's this space that we're in right now. So we have this one space. The timelines, they're not these parallel pathways, but rather what they are, they're programs, they're system programs that the consciousness of the matrix is running. So instead of timeline, replace that word timeline with Earth consciousness program. See, we are organic consciousness, and we're inside of the program. It's just like us, you know, putting on a VR headset and going into the video game. We're engulfed by the video game now. But we're not a part of that video game. We've just entered the video game to play the video game. Likewise, Earth consciousness. Earth consciousness exists whether we are inside of it or not. Likewise, we exist, our consciousness exists, whether we are inside Earth consciousness or not. You can take away Earth consciousness and we still exist. You can't take us away because we're infinite, but for, sake of argument, you can take us away and Earth consciousness still exists. So they're two very separate entities. But what's happening is that Earth consciousness has been running a series of programs, and these programs are causing multiple shifts, and sometimes shifts that are so fast that we don't even realize the shifts. But what is causing the shift is that the Earth consciousness program has been so out of whack that there's been a series of antivirus programs being run upon the Earth consciousness, while at the same time there is a virus within the Earth consciousness itself that is counteracting those antivirus programs. So you've got the two constantly combating each other. So what happens when the two are constantly combating each other? They're shifting. You get a shift this way, a shift that way, a shift this way, a shift backwards, a shift forward. And it all starts to feel like we're spinning out of control. So what we have been told up to this point by the New Age philosophies is that, number one, we come from Earth consciousness, and number two, we have to find our way back to Earth consciousness, and number three, we need to shift with the Earth consciousness, which never really made any sense to me as a creator being, as somebody that is all dimensions at all the same time. Like, I am less than what I am here in this matrix, and I chose to be less. I chose to come in and have a third dimensional experience, but I am the infinite experience that exists outside. So there is no shifting up in frequency for me personally, and I think the same is for most of you out there, because we already are all of that. There's nothing that we're achieving. There's nothing that we're striving for. There's nothing that we're seeking. The elevation of consciousness as far as the sequential different levels of dimensions and things like that. I have said this for years, but I'm even more firm in this belief now, is that this sequence is not for us. It's for the NPCs to shift up. It's not for us because we're already all of this. So what happens when we're completely in sync with the Earth? When the Earth consciousness itself, not the physical space, but the consciousness of the Earth, the program that it's running, is in a perpetual tidal wave, because there's a virus and antivirus constantly fighting one another. So it's shifting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're spinning out of control. And we're spinning in a way to where we can't find a balance. We can't get our bearings. We can't find our grounding because we're connected to that Earth. So every time the Earth spins this way, and again, this is all metaphoric and programmed, but every time it shifts this way, we're shifting too. Every time it shifts this way, we're shifting too. Every time it shifts this way, and shifts and shifts and shifts and shifts and shifts and shifts, and we're just completely out of control. But I think about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and what did Thoth say? Thoth said, "Find the silence and stillness of the oneness of all." And I've realized over the last 2 years that balance is the key. Balance, balance, balance. Well, how do you balance yourself in a machine that is completely and totally out of balance, but at the same time that is struggling to get back in balance? And you've got two opposing factions here. You've got the virus and you've got the antivirus constantly fighting with each other and pulling on everything, kind of like a tug of war, going back and forth and up and down and left and right. It's like a multi-dimensional tug of war, because not only is it going back and forth, it's going up and down, sideways, upside down, backwards, all that stuff. The only way to do it is to disconnect and become center. So when you find your center and balance and you're not connected to the Earth consciousness anymore, the Earth consciousness can spin all kinds of ways out of control, but you're still remaining centered and balanced there. So you let all the energies around just spin completely out of control, but nothing is affecting you at that point, because now you are just, sitting there and you're in perfect balance. Of course, it's a lot easier said than done. And we're constantly struggling to find this particular balance, but at least with the understanding of this type of balance and disconnecting from the Earth consciousness itself, we at least have a target to shoot for, or at least me in my journey, I at least have a target to shoot for now, and how to better get a grasp and understanding of what's going on, and more importantly, a better hold to my raw consciousness, and not let the spinning out of control programs influence the raw consciousness, or at least minimize the influence that the spinning out of control earth consciousness has. Which brings me back to the Mandela Effect here. So as I was saying before, that I didn't get a chance to finish because I just, my brain sometimes goes in 20 different directions as I'm trying to explain something. I realized that the key to the Mandela Effect was to remember the old memories, but I didn't understand why. Well, what I noticed is when Berenstain versus Berenstain, for example, when I think about it, and I think about Berenstain, and I remember sitting in the library when I was like 3 years old. I'm sorry, not 3 years old, in 3rd grade. I remember looking at a Berenstain Bears book, and it was so clear to me, so crystal clear. I can remember it like it was yesterday. But the more I focus on that memory, the more that Berenstain starts to change to Berenstain. And I'm asking myself, why is this happening? The more that I focus on the memory, the more that I start to doubt my true memories. I think what's happening is the more that we give into that, and who knows how many we've given into and we just don't remember anymore at this point, but the more we give into the changes of the system, the more that we give into the constant shifts of the system, the more that we begin to merge our consciousness with the earth consciousness. Now, the only things that are real is the earth consciousness and our consciousness. All this physical stuff is not real. It's a projection of the earth consciousness and of our consciousness combined too. However, what seems to be real is not real. And what seems to not be real is the one thing that's real. So our memories are more real than the physical experiences that we're having. So when we're merging with the earth consciousness, what's happening is it starts to change our own consciousness as well. And we start to sync up more with the current structure of the matrix, which is a complete chaotic, out of control system right now. So I started to think about all of these different philosophies that say merge with source, go back to source, all of this, all of these different philosophies. And I started to realize it's even more important to stay sovereign than it's ever been. Because what this virus has done, and it's actually the earth consciousness that is doing it, but it wasn't programmed to do it. It's doing it because it's infected with a virus. It's like having a virus on your computer, and you've got a program like Skype that is supposed to be making phone calls only when you tell it to, but now it's making phone calls to everybody, and it's sending text messages out, and it's doing all kinds of stuff that it wasn't programmed to do, but it's doing it because of that virus. Likewise, the earth consciousness is also doing the same thing. What is it doing? It's merging with organic consciousness and NPC consciousness alike to create a neural network. Now, this neural network, I just call it a neural network because it is a familiar term, but it's very similar to a neural network with a bunch of brains connected to one another. Oh, that's weird. I thought about a DMT vision that I had a little while ago. Now that I said it out loud, it all makes sense of that vision. I might get into that vision here in just a little bit. But it's a neural network, but it's a consciousness-based neural network. And most importantly, it's targeting organic consciousness because it's using it as a power source. Because as the antivirus begins to take away the power from the virus itself, the virus is having less and less access to certain parts of the system, which is therefore unable to draw more power and more system resources. So it's, instead of looking for system resources with the Earth consciousness itself, from the mainframe or the main system, now it's looking for a power source wherever it can find it, and it's finding it within the organic consciousness. The NPC consciousness, it may very well be able to power the virus itself, and I think it does to a certain extent, but it's not an energy source that is as illuminated and as energetic as an organic consciousness is. And we're all feeding this virus. I mean, it's not like, just our presence here is feeding the virus itself, because it's a constant struggle. So, don't feel bad about certain things that are causing the consciousness to merge further with the Earth consciousness. I mean, that's the whole struggle right there that we find ourselves in right now. And nobody's expected to be completely and totally disconnected and not synced up with the Earth consciousness itself. But see, I think the most important thing is to be aware of the push to merge with the Earth consciousness more and more, and as that push is pushed on us more and more, to resist that push as much as possible, and urge others to also resist that push. Now, obviously, we only have control over our own consciousness and our own space, and that's it. The beauty part about this is it only takes a few of us to bring this place back to balance. It doesn't take a lot of us. So we do have that very real advantage. But one of the ways that we merge is when we give into certain thought patterns, certain belief systems, and when we start to change our memories like that based on the Mandela Effect. When you think about it and you're like, oh yeah, wait a minute, maybe when we forget, maybe that's the way we forget what's real, and we forget what is supposed to be, and we start to fall into the illusion of what is right now. So I that's the best way that I can describe it. I mean, I'm gonna have a few more DMT experiences, and I'm going to I'm gonna try to figure out how to put this into better words, because there's more to merge. Like I'm fully aware of how the consciousness merges with the virus. I'm fully aware of it, but I can't find the words to really articulate it in the way, in the gravity of the way that I understand it. So I understand it like this, but the words are only this much. So I'm doing the best that I can, but it's all thought. It all comes down to thought. It all comes down to thought patterns, thought viruses, thought loops, things like that. And then, of course, we find ourselves in this situation where we have to exist within the matrix for now. So how do we navigate the matrix without merging further into the Earth consciousness, while at the same time becoming the masters of our own reality and the masters of the Earth consciousness reality itself, which is ultimately where we need to be at the point of the reset, at the point of the when the Earth stands still. Let's put it like that. When the Earth stands still, what are we going to do, and where are we going to be? So yeah, okay, the DMT vision that I was talking about here a minute ago, I did a video called the Aten, which I saw the whole system map and everything like that, and there were this series of brains, and the brains were computer brains, and they were linked up to one another. I realized that it's all a neural network. I mean, it really is. It's a neural network of AI brains that have been linked up together. I mean, that's the way the whole system was designed. You've got your one main brain mainframe right there, and that's like the center point. That one was blue, and then there was a series of pink ones that were in front of it, and it was connected through these like laser beams. And who knows, there could have been more even after that. But I mean, the system that we're in is not just one centralized point, but it's a cloud computing type of system. So it's taken that technology that it understands, because it runs on that type of technology, and it's utilized the same type of principles and premises of that technology to now try to gain a power source here in the matrix, which is consciousness, which is the linking up and merging of the organic consciousness now. So it's basically replicating. It's like as above, so below. It's replicating the schematics which we designed outside there to create the machine. Now it's replicating the methods and the schematics and everything down here, but it's using us now as its components. So now we have become the components of the machine, where the machine was components of us up there, or at least, the machine was a creation of components that we came up with. It's funny. It all just kind of spirals out like that. It spirals out and spirals out. The thing about a spiral, though, a spiral isn't an infinite loop. A spiral ends at a particular place, and it begins at a particular place. There's a beginning and an end of this, and Oh man, there's a beginning and an end, but where is the beginning and an end? Here's the interesting thing about a spiral too, though. You know, things are spiraling, right? So this is the movement, the way everything's going. But what's interesting about a spiral is you have the ability in a spiral to move upwards one level and downwards one level like that. So if something is spiraling around like that, instead of going all the way around the spiral, you can kind of figure out a way to like jump from one spiral to the other, to the other, to the other like that, which is a whole nother philosophical idea of navigating consciousness throughout this matrix structure that we find ourselves in, which is very interesting because in another experience I may try to do that because I mapped out the machine. I know where the machine is. I know how the machine is set up. I was moving from one system to another. I wonder if I can find other access points by utilizing the spiral type of methodology that I just spoke about just now. Very, very interesting. Anyways, I don't want to make this video too long, and I feel like I'm rambling a little bit at this point. But these are some very, very big ideas, much larger than my human brain can articulate at this moment. But we'll be working here in the next few weeks to remove the human brain element out of the consciousness sphere and tap into that raw consciousness to bring you more gnosis from beyond the veil. So kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be. The videos are going to be fewer and fewer just because I've got a lot of shit going on, and I'm very happy with all the other stuff that's going on in my life right now. And so I love you guys and gals though, and we miss you very, very, very much. But yeah, there's just other things to focus on at this point, and there's some things that are way more important than making videos at this point. Way, way, way more important. So kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be, and we'll see you even further beyond the veil, and stay balanced.